everyone. My name is Kyle Walgren. This is another episode of the Business of Education. Today, our guest is coming from halfway around the world, in Germany currently. Her name is Noam Gerstein, and she is the CEO of a company called Bina, which is a tech-based methodology designed to deliver customized learning at scale for primary students. Wow, that's a mouthful this morning. I guess I haven't had enough Celsius because my words aren't coming out right. Coffee? Should we? I was having mud water for a moment, and I think I was better on the mud water. But this morning I woke up late and I grabbed an energy drink, and you can tell. How are you?
Really good. Lovely to be here. Lovely to meet. Lovely to finally have this conversation. I was waiting. I'm looking forward to it. So delighted.
You're
Yeah.
you're the first and last person that I've ever spoke to prior to a podcast. And after speaking to you, I was like, I learned so much then that was curious how I was going to do today. So I've been like looking on my calendar to wait and see when you're coming on the show because I've been super excited. Tell us your story because you're in Germany right now. I believe, if I remember right, you're born in America, moved to Israel.
No.
No?
No. I'm a Jerusalemite. I grew up partially there and partially and I lived in the States as a child in New York and went back
Okay, that just had it
to Israel.
backwards.
Yeah, and then let's see. I went to uni when I was 15. Studied history and philosophy of science and technology, and worked with Physicians for Human Rights. Spent some time working with them, developing different aspects. Spent quite a bit of time in activism around medical rights in the Israel-Palestine region, whatever you want to call that place. Um, yeah, and supported building their I did many different things with them, including supported building an open clinic for people with no medical rights around there. Now serving, I think, over 600,000 people a year. They're doing amazing, phenomenal work.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're unbelievable. Worked there, did some work daily in the clinic, did supported philanthropic fundraising and ops and communications. Needed needed to ease my life down as much as exciting. That was exciting in so many ways. Let's say that. Needed to ease my life down. Moved to London, studied some more there. Came back to Israel, opened my first business, and kind of exited it at 26. Felt incredibly privileged with the ability to build and with some just both in terms of managing to gather people to do things together and made a decision that I'm keen on building things that people absolutely need. So I have this appetite, I guess, for industries that are massive and that have I guess that have interesting resource allocation. Let's say that. So
I
basically, when
like
you
your
look at the
wording.
business model, you kind of go like, "Wait a second, what?" And kind of, and obviously, much prefer the company of little humans over the rest. Spend years traveling, many, and was incredibly fortunate to sit in schools in the world and interview little humans and their adults to try and understand differences and similarities between the systems and how potentially would a system upgrade look. It's still a fascination. In 2020, I got a small grant from the EU to do educational testing. We did that for a year. In 2021, we opened Bina. So that's in a nutshell.
And that's awesome. And so one, this isn't your first kick at the cat. You've built a business and exited it. You've got to go through that roller coaster and emotion. You moved into ed tech, as you mentioned. You love little humans. One of the things I found fascinating is that you spent time traveling the world to understand the differences in education. A lot of us look at things really close, and one problem where you took a step back, looked at it from multiple different ways, location, culturally, so on. Tell us the work that Bina is doing right now, and where you guys are at in that journey.
Yeah, with absolute delight. So we offer full education. So it's a schooling for
Mm-hmm.
kids aged 4 to 12. We so it's a comprehensive curriculum and experience. It's not a physical school. We operate in, we have kids in 6 time zones right now, but we
Oh
operate
wow,
primarily in Euro Africa. We have a cohort in Eastern, so we have kids learning together from the very east of Canada throughout South America, and we're opening Pacific in Q3, so that's really, really exciting. And crossing our fingers to succeed with that and move on to East Asia in Q1. So we educate kids in different places in the world together every day. All learning is active, collaborative, real time with teachers and peers. We have a model because of the digital way. We kind of use resources in a little bit more consolidated manner. And so our classes are very, very small. We have up to 7 kids in a group. And our educators are phenomenal. The teachers have at least a master's in education, if not more. They've taught in different places in the world, and I mean, the daily life is very, very moving.
mm-hmm.
We teach thematically, so and the themes are what we call biomes, so kind of habitats. So let's say now we're moving into the forest, and
That's
everything they
awesome.
learn is related to the forest, from their math and literacy and so on and so forth. It also helps us kind of change the prisms, or let's say the sunglasses color every month and a half. So because we teach kids from different places in the world, it helps us kind of answer questions like whose history, whose geography, whose literature. And so with the biomes, we move through cultures as well.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and we teach, so the methodology is mainly project based. So they learn the complexities of that biome from different lenses and build something of their own. And that's what we offer right now. Um, and it's growing and it's gorgeous and it's
The
incredibly moving. We have
so
kids, for
you
example, from.
service. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
So I was saying you service the homeschool market. What are one of the things that you're seeing? What I find super interesting is that you're bringing different cultures into the same class, that are still actively participating in those cultures. What are you seeing as something that you just blew your mind that you're learning in real time, putting all these young students from different cultures in the same learning environment?
So, I mean, obviously, like I'm very compelled with the ideas that if we educate our children together, we are marching towards a better world. Um,
I agree with that.
so we have multiple cases in which we have students from not only different cultures, but cultures that are at war studying together every day.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not a peace project and we don't press on that real hard, it's just part of their daily life. And they're kids from many places, but places that are at war tend to be really close and many times really close in culture. And what comes up is their similarities, and their friendships shine beautifully. So I think that's a very good reason to wake up in the morning. Um, so that's one example. I think there are different examples that have to do with parental approaches and approaches to learning, and what is that? What are the sets of expectation of school from all stakeholders that have a great deal of similarity all over the world, and we can talk about why that is in a second. But
Mm-hmm.
but there are nuances, And so when the attempt is to build something that is actively, as you mentioned, multicultural, there are patterns um, that are incredibly telling and very compelling. And you know, I think every culture can learn a lot from others. And what happens at Bina kind of naturally is that we land in the middle, and we take a lot of we put a lot of effort in making sure that the discourse mm, around similarities and differences in an open and honest and loving way is very active in our classrooms. So actually, like, what we're saying is that when they grow together, although they're incredibly different, they're still kids. They're still friends. And in
Kids
many
have
ways,
no bias unless
way
you teach it to
wiser
them.
than us. Um, and then obviously, because you know, we're not homeschooling because the home doesn't school them, right?
Right.
It's our job.
So
But
would you
also,
consider it like a micro school then, or I'm just
no,
trying to
I mean,
figure out
it's a
a
new category. I
yeah.
would consider it a new category because it's not homeschooling because the home doesn't school them. It's 100% our responsibility to ensure that, like, their academic development, their social emotional development is on track. It's not the parents' job to do that. It's our job to do that. We're also not old school for a variety of reasons. And so we are building a middle category that is crafted to educate Gen A's. And it's a new. It's not micro schools. Micro schools tend to they're physical. They're in houses. It's a very different thing. This is actually built to scale.
So how many hours a day? This is super interesting. How many hours a day? Because you're building your own space, right? And it's not traditional in any way. So how many
Mhm.
hours a day are you seeing kids coming in and engaging in multi different locations? I've got a couple questions around this. How many hours a day are you seeing them come in and be engaging and grow? One. And then two, you said that you put groups together. How do you identify time zones for these students?
Okay, so question number one. This is full schooling, so it's not like we don't measure engagement in whether they attended or not. They come, and if they don't come, we text their parents, right? So it's not a model that's completely at your own pace. We consider their pace and we adjust to their pace and we make sure that it's included and that they're interested are included. But they
Mhm.
should come to school because they're studying foundations and those are important. So we teach 5 synchronous hours a day,
Okay.
um, 5 days a week. So it's definitely a schooling experience. They're all live and active, so it's never a child in front of a screen with no one on the other end. It's about collaboration, and um, and they have different. It depends a little bit on their developmental phase. They have different. The days are structured a bit different depending on the groups, but obviously breaks and learning stations. You know, sometimes I was asked, how do you make a 4-year-old sit in front of a screens for 5 hours? I was like, most of them are not sitting, for example. Like, we can do a lot of reconsidering of, you know, things that work really well in classrooms and come with a set of expectations. But like for 4-year-olds, in most cases, like standing is a much better way for them to learn. I'm a 4-year-old, by the way. I don't sit when when I'm in meetings. Yeah, so that's the first question. The second is we do try and have that. We've tried a bunch of different things, but actually we learned that we we have a preference for kids to be approximately in the same time zone. So basically, our time zones cover three. Our classes tend to cover 3 time zones. So 1 hour before, and 1 hour, the middle, and the like -1, 0, and +1, basically, right? Is a
Okay.
time zone for us. We've tested different things. This is actually really, really interesting. We found, and maybe we'll find different, maybe we'll discover other surprises, but we, for now, do prefer the kids to be approximately at the same time a day because they're in different mindsets. And those do have kind of a circadian rhythm to them, right? So it's like
Right.
there is there's just a beat to different hours of the day with kids, and so we do prefer that. Having said that, we have like some families that are in the Far East that were like, we want to join your school, and we're like, we don't have your time zone yet. They're like, it's okay. So I mean, we work with stuff, but I do think that there's a huge benefit in that. Within those time zones, again, it's like from the very north to the very south, so it covers quite a lot of countries and areas, right? But within those time zones, we attempt uh, smart matching the kids. Uh, um, really kind
Dive into
of
that a
being
little
very
bit. What's smart matching?
that is a heated debate even within the team. I can give you both sides of what people say, and we're trying different ways to
Yeah,
do
you're a
it,
startup, you're learning.
because we're still building, and we're also like whatever approach we choose to land on. And I think this is a part of why it's so fascinating to build in this era. Like it's a little bit like building a street, and you when you plan the street and place the I don't know, and pave the way, it is unlikely that it would be undug.
Yeah.
And that's the era of build that we're in, and that's a huge reason to be incredibly mindful and very, very deliberate regarding how we build here. So with that caveat, here are the two sides, even within our team, incredibly heated debate. One opinion states that because that kids benefit tremendously from differentiated needs within a classroom. So you want, I am one of them, like one of our educators says, I want deliberately children in different reading levels in my classroom.
Okay.
It is really important for them. It helps them. It makes them work together. It allows them to open their minds to the fact that there are differences in capacities and in understandings in the world. I need that. It's a good life lesson. That's one kind of very simplified, but one opinion. The second opinion says, at Bina, their lives, the amount of different that we offer is unprecedented, right? Like they're literally from everywhere. Like they have the most diverse backgrounds you can fathom, in the sense that like we have incredibly religious kids with kids that have different family structures and a lot of things, right? So like it's very, very, very diverse. And so actually, if I am teaching a math specific, or like, I don't know, grammar specific concept, I need my classes to be in the same space, right?
Right.
And because we can change, because development is nonlinear, and a lot of the wonders that we can do in the digital realm has to do with really having a very deep understanding of what students know, what they can do, and to which depth, and to really fit the level. So kids don't necessarily need to be in the same group for their math and for their science, right? It could
Right.
be They could be in different groups, because they're in different places. Development is not non-linear, right? We have one child that his literacy is age appropriate, meaning that he's like in third grade, and his math is in ninth grade, right? Because he's just like that, right?
Right.
So we are very able to accommodate that. So that's kind of the two realms, and we actually we're 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 testing and proving who's right. but
Whose
but
curriculum do you follow then? Like, do you follow an American curriculum? Do you follow like where do you start there?
So what we did is and this is a little bit about what we're building, but here is a short story.
Okay.
We started out, and this is a continuous work, but this is kind of the back end story. But we took the Anglosphere's standards, right? The UK standards, the US Common Core, the Australian standards, so on. We dove for a very long time into comparison work because the aim was to ensure that we cover all of them. Because what
Hmm.
we want is that when a student graduates or transitions to us or from us, we can be very sure that they can move into any international school. And hopefully any school within the Anglosphere, right? So
Right.
we ended up with, let's say, a curricular map or a taxonomy, if you'd like, right?
Hmm.
And then we mapped it backwards from age 12 to age 4, and we broke it down to what we call micro credentials. So usually standards are like by the age of, like, by the end of grade 1, they can count to 100. Okay.
Right.
For us, it's like I can count to 5, I can count back from 5. I can count to 10, I can count back from 10. I can jump count by 2, right, to 10.
Right.
So like each of those standards has a lot of micro components in them. And so we create the vast majority of our content for a variety of reasons. Uh, but it correlates to that map.
The this is so fascinating. I'm assuming, and we all know what assumed it, but I'm assuming English is the primary language that the school is in.
We teach only English right now. We do communicate with families in other languages, so we have a lot of students that they are with us speaking English, but their families speak no English at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Uh, my dream, I would say, is to get to a place where they study 66% in English and 33% in a language of choice.
Oh, that
But it's not happening tomorrow.
no, I we have that exact conversation within our organization all the time, right? Being a literacy product in the United States, I went into it. My idea was that we're in the USA. The primary language is English. That we needed to
Mhm.
focus on English literacy rates, and as we grow into these schools, they're like, no, we need to be English and Spanish, and you're like, well, do the teachers speak Spanish? They're like, no, but we're going to make sure that they have Spanish literacy rates. And this is literally the stuff that we're learning about in real time, all very fascinating. I'm like, well, where do we draw the line then? Are we going to learn in English, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Hindi? Like where are we going to draw the line? Because if we're going to cater to another language outside of English in the US education system, there's a lot of people with a lot of different languages in
Yeah,
in
I
this
mean, there's a
country,
bunch of
you know?
languages. I mean, I think like in the end of the day, there's like a business prism there, right? So there's just number of specific language speakers in the world or within your market, and
Hmm.
you draw the line on where that business is worth your while, right? In some
Right.
way, like, and so like how many of your customers absolutely need this language or require it, and then you can say, okay, well, like it's just to me beyond my personal fascination with languages and the fact that um, I know from at least for myself that I have a very different personalities in the languages I speak. So it clearly shapes a mind is what I'm suggesting, and it allows different ways to look at the world. So I want bilingualism at the very least to offer to any child we educate for sure. But I think, I mean, there are huge differences between your business and and ours in the sense that you provide a field specific solution
Hmm.
and we kind of sit at the, let's say, at the,
Helm.
yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive experience. But I mean, having said that, like, we now offer English. so, so, so like, um, uh, Globish is definitely the answer in terms of step one for sure.
The
There are
you
really fascinating experiments, by the way. So if you ask a monolingual child, you show them a picture with, like, I don't know, um, a purple cat with wings, like playing baseball, and you ask a monolingual child, "Is this possible?" The monolingual child will say, "No." You ask a bilingual child if it's possible, he's like, "Maybe." And you ask a trilingual child, they're like, "Yeah, I guess so." So, like, there are benefits to it, but again, it's a business decision at the end of the day.
That's so interesting. The I love watching kids develop, and I never, in our conversation in the past, I never intended in being in education at all. I was just a dad that had a problem, the same problem that I felt like the whole world was going through at that time. What do we do?
Yeah.
Um, and it's what brought me to education. Uh, Being a
Mhm.
dad is probably my favorite thing to do in the whole world. Um,
Oh yes, what a joy to be
but
a stewardess.
to come in and get into education, it's a very close second, and I never would have thought that because I would have told you 5 years ago that education wasn't important, and I'm living proof that you can go to school till grade 9 and make millions of dollars, and be what the American vision of success would look like. But
Hmm.
after diving into literacy, especially in education, my opinions dramatically changed. Um,
What can
Education
you, like?
has a
Do you have a?
foundation.
Sorry. Did you have a
Go ahead.
pivotal moment there? That did you have a pivotal moment that changed your mind? Like what?
So my pivotal moment was 24 hours, and um, it was 24-hour decision and 18 months of lockdowns. So what what I was learning was, one, my daughter asked the question, "Can you teach me how to read?" I hadn't seen her in over 18 months in person because of the border restrictions. I couldn't go home and touch her, hold her, tuck her into bed, and she asked me to teach her how to read. As a parent, it broke my heart to not be able to be there through this fear moments that we were all going through. So
Mhm,
that was like, okay, I need to do something. My kids are asking me for something in this very scary time. I need to deliver because I'm not there to
mhm,
tuck them into bed at night. So that was what started the journey, was that question, and my desire to be a father. Um, Learning about and then another thing that played into it is that I was watching the news, and the media was telling two or three different stories depending on which news you wanted to follow, but then those stories were different depending on the country that you were following. And I was just like, well, I'm going to go learn myself. I'm going to go figure this out and base my own opinion because nobody seems to have the same message here. And then
mhm,
in doing that, I started looking at, like, for programs to help my kids. I'm like, oh, it's 2020. There's got to be some sort of reading app that will help a non-reading parent teach their kids how to read, and there wasn't. Um, and I don't think anybody can really understand what being a non-reader is or feels like unless you've gone through it. You can imagine, but there's a level of hopelessness that you go through. There's a level of bullying that you go through as a child, that really impacts you in different ways. And people hide from it. Give you an example. And until I dove into this, people didn't have these deeper conversations, or I wasn't a part of them. But say at the hospital, a lot of times somebody will give them a prescription or the medical release from a doctor. And one of the stories that I got on this journey is that the patient handed it back and she said, "I don't have my reading glasses. Could you read this to me?" And the lady's like, "Oh, could you, here, you can have mine." And the patient at that time had to explain, "I actually can see, I just can't read." And there's stories like that that I've heard a million times now. And
mhm,
it really changed my opinion on why we don't understand people, is because we're not given a large part of the population doesn't have the ability to make decisions on their own, because they're forced or they are dependent on what the media tells them. And as we know, the media is a propaganda tool to, or my beliefs, to create chaos so they have ratings. If there was no chaos in the world, the news wouldn't have anybody to watch it, right? So chaos is their best friend. And that's all they wanted to tell us was chaos. And so 54 million American adults can't read the menu at the restaurant. You increase literacy rates in the United States by 2 grade levels. You increase GDP by $2.2 trillion. You increase literacy rates in the incarcerated population. You go from an 87% chance of reoccurring down to an 18% chance of reoccurring. Just all this stuff tied to literacy. And I was like, if we could just teach people how to read, just even the Wall Street Journal is written at a grade 6 reading level. The most sophisticated piece of literature in the United States is written at grade 6 reading level. So if we could teach kids how to get to grade 6 in their reading level, how much could we advance society as a whole? And so all of this took place under 18 months, but in 24 hours for me to ask all these questions. And I was like, why isn't this our main focus? And then when I started like researching on how the education system was built and who created it, and you trace it back to the primary funding being like Andrew Carnegie and these people that needed factory workers, it just kind of laid it out there. We've built school to push people through a system that no longer exists. Teachers are out there committed to those kids passionately because they believe in what they're doing, but I feel like they're given the wrong tools to make a difference. And you have the right people doing it. You've just given them the wrong tools to really make an impact.
I
And
think like I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. And that's kind of where it ends. That was the start of it all. So sorry to go on that rant, but that was
No,
my journey and
beautiful
why this
story.
is the most important thing for me.
Yeah. I I mean I think that education systems generally. I mean, there's a lot of talk about there's no change in education since the 1900s. So it's just like not true.
No,
I think there's
I think there is change. It's definitely coming. And I think since COVID happened, it's coming faster now, but continue on.
I think I think the issue is that people are doing amazing work, but they work in a system that's dated, and that's the issue, right? Like there's like
Mm-hmm.
beautiful field-specific solutions that do wonders. Like the educators are amazing, like they're just
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal human beings. They're angels, right?
Agreed.
And wise and innovative and like working hard. But um, education systems are historically built to mimic the society, to prepare whoever is coming into that society to be active participants within it, right?
Right.
And the education system as we know it, or right now, or how we call it, well, or let's call it old schools, are are mimicking a society that doesn't exist for a very long time. And the
Mm-hmm.
gap and the gap between how we live today and what and how that system is crafted to do is tremendous. And so what happens kind of in its day to day is that it kind of collapses into itself because it is not made for today. It's not built to include
Agreed.
like amazing innovations. It's just not, that's not its purpose, right? And a lot of the wonders that humanity has built, and now it's kind of super exciting and explosive, so we can talk about that too, but um, they cannot be systemically included into that. And so beyond like, this is before we talk about the 3.5 million teachers that we're going to miss in September and other massive problems. And I know where they are. They're like applying to Bina because no one
Yeah. Well,
wants
we see it all
to.
the time.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to like. I mean, some people do, but like most of them prefer to like not have gum in their hair and teach groups of 7 kids and be incredibly deliberate and supportive and know have their students be known in a deep way, right?
They're making an
Uh,
impact.
and
And
and preferably do that from Bali if they feel like it, right? Uh, and then this is before, like, educators with small kids and educators with disabilities and a bunch of other things that we can be like, we are in a time where we can be way more inclusive to parts of kind of this ecosystem of education in a very beautiful way. And by the way, like, if we talk about like how we match kids, like in a physical classroom, if you put a 7-year-old to study math with the 12-year-olds, how are they going to physically feel in that classroom?
Right. I agree with you 100%. The education training, actually, the last guest I had on the show talked about technology is growing education in a great way, but we're still trying to put it over top of outdated resources. And that's what's slowing it down, is like you're saying, is that we've built school to put people into their environment, instead of prepare them on how to change the environment they're in, which is ultimately part of my mission. Let's change the foundation of where these people are coming from so they can change the trajectory of where they're going. Um, we don't have to forget where they came from. I never want to forget that I grew up in the trailer park in Olds, Alberta, because it's who I am. Um, but it's not who I needed to be my whole life. And now I'm in an area that I would have told you 25 years ago I would never circle back to, and loving it every day. So I
Yeah.
influence people to take a look at how they can impact their communities, um, in education with new and uh, new ways of doing things. It's going to be an interesting
I
journey
think
the next few
also,
years.
one of the more exciting aspects, I think, of what I believe the future of schooling and of education allows is, because we can measure without continuous humans doing the itty gritty work at every second, we can look at educational outcomes on not as a periodic exercise, but as a continuum. And not only academic educational outcomes, by the way, also social emotional educational outcomes, right?
Mhm.
So, and that is very exciting for humankind. And the reason why it's so exciting is because I think because of capacity, right? If you're in a physical classroom, you're going to test them once a month or whatever, right? And that's the data points you have. You don't have the data points from every game they play on the soccer field. You just can't do that, right?
Right.
Um, but when you can account for those, you can see two things I think are beautiful. One is that we will stop grasping the self as a I am like this or I am like that, because we will be able to see how people metamorph, right, with their knowledge and with their ability to communicate and other things. So I think it would allow self perceptions actually to become way more flexible than they are right now. And I think that's incredibly exciting and incredibly exciting for learning, as well as I hope that it would allow for us to craft in a significantly more accurate way. We call it precision education, but in a significantly more accurate way, what is the content that these people need and will need? Uh, and instead
I
of
love that.
doing that 4 years in advance, or even like the most amazing skilled teachers can do that like on the fly to some extent for their group of 20, but with not enough data points. We will be able to do that every single second. So, like, if we're teaching, let's say and this is not tomorrow, but in not very far future, let's say I'm an educator and we're talking about microbiomes, okay? And, uh, and Anna has a cold. Like, we're supposed to be able to immediately like walk up an elephant's nostril and look at where cold comes from. Like, it's 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 not so far away from where we are right now.
It's
So
not.
the ability to craft content that exactly fits the conversation is not decades away from us. And this is something that we won't be able to do in a physical classroom.
No, and so what you're talking about is kind of the model that Ed Soma took, right? We thought that if kids could select content that was engaging to them, we'd get true data points on where they're actually at. A child located in Texas is more interested on Texas type things than, say a child in China. And a child in China is more interested on things that have to do with China than, typically the United States, and vice versa. And so we've focused on interest driven content in order to drive engagement first and foremost, and then design in real time a reading map for those students to be able to grow at the pace that they need to. Because I agree with you 100%. If we could give teachers the data points in real time to where each individual student is, we can adapt to the things that they actually need in real time and give them a full plate of food to grow with instead of just, the vegetables they might not want. So I agree with you 100% on this data driven focus to be able to really advance kids in a way that is going to accelerate our future tremendously. One of the people that I admire in technology is Elon Musk. He took his kids out of a public or traditional school and built his own form of schooling because he had some of the same ideas as you, and same ideas as a lot of the people that come on the show. Is that we need to change school a little bit. The people that are teaching are still amazing people, uh, and we're seeing them move into new markets in ed tech. You know what I mean? My staff are all former teachers. We look for that, because they
Yeah.
understand the challenges. And just like what
Mhm.
you're saying, you get teachers coming to you every day wanting to be a part of your organization just because they believe in the mission. They believe in the
Yeah.
mission. And
Um,
teachers are amazing people. Like, they don't get enough credit. And then 4 years ago, I would have told you a different story, but here I am.
I uh, I think that I'm going to say a bold statement here, but I I am betting that the future of human activity lies in teaching and in care. And whoever holds keys to how to do that wonderfully and how to support doing that with grace is the holder of that's the key to the future. That's my pretty firm belief,
I think
given
you're probably pretty accurate with that.
given the way the world is turning.
Yeah, we're never going to
Which
replace
is great.
teachers. They're just going to replace some of the role that they're doing in the classroom. They're no longer going to have to spend hours a day grading papers. They can teach and show kids how to do things differently, and it's going to be an amazing change. We're running short on time here, but one of the questions I like to end with, and just to give you context, I knew this conversation was going to be a long time. Typically, my podcast lasts between 20 and 25 minutes. So I knew where this was going to go today, and I've been super excited to have this conversation with you. Super excited because I knew we were going to dive into a lot of really neat
Yeah,
things.
there's a lot of stuff.
But I like to end it with a question around the importance of networking. And if you were to give advice to a young founder, a young person wanting to make a difference, give them some advice on utilizing their network and how important your network is to you and what you're doing.
Smart, wiser people from me have said before that the only real advantage we have as humans is the ability to collaborate. I mean, like a single one of us will not take a tiger, but apparently by now most of them are gone. So um, I I think that so as an advice to founders, I mean, like you can't do anything alone, and intellectual humility is potentially the most important quality of them all. There's no one you can't learn from, uh, and um, and I think at least my experience is that people are keen to help.
They are.
and show up. I do suggest that one should remind them like 3 times to actually do it, but still. uh, so I think that, and I don't know. I'm a very curious human being, so I actually like reach out to random people and say, "Hey, I have this problem. I guess you're an expert. Maybe would you talk to me? Like, can you answer my question?" And so, if you are very specific on who you're reaching out to and very articulate with what you actually want from them, most of them actually answer.
They do, just like you answered me,
Um,
because we reached out cold to get you to
yeah,
come
very
talk
true.
about
It
what you
was
were
great.
doing.
So, I mean, of course, and I think at the end of the day, even if it's just a conversation at first round, um, like that's how we move the world forward. So I think network is actually potentially the most important thing.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. I'm so blessed to have you on the show today. I can't
oh,
wait to have
likewise,
another
I'm so
conversation
lucky.
with you.
It's so fun.
Have a blessed day. Thank you so much.
You too.